I hope you're able to process whatever you think is worthy of processing from that last discussion. Okay, now we're going to move on to the next discussion. We're gonna have a reflection. Why was it difficult, or why is it difficult to answer the question what is good? You know, if you try it yourself, and if you really are critical, you have a very difficult time actually trying to figure out the answer on that. In fact, so many researches, so many different papers, articles have been written, different studies have been done, but the jury's still out on that. After what? After thousands of years of existence, our civilization has not really agreed on the answer on that intellectually. So why are questions like that? What is good? What is justice? What is beauty? What is peace? What is harmony? What is cooperation? These kind of questions. Why are they so difficult to answer? This difficulty was already addressed by Socrates and Plato during their time, and they thought that, well, it's difficult to answer because what was their answer? Um, I won't tell you the answer first. First, I want you to count. Okay, I want you to count how many worlds you think exist. How many worlds do you have? All right, I mean place, literally. I mean place. Okay, how many of you have just this world and nothing else? Okay, maybe some of you think, okay, well, I have more than one world, or I have this world and then heaven, right? And then maybe some of you have three, of course, heaven and then hell, and maybe some of you have purgatory. Maybe because some of you are not updated Catholics because that's been outruled already. But no matter how many worlds you have, um, Plato, his answer to that question is two. Okay, Plato believes in the existence of two worlds. And if we go back to the question, why are truths? Why is the definition of good, which is a truth? Why is the definition of good so difficult to find? The answer of Plato is, well, because it's not here. You cannot find something that isn't here. Okay, you're here, and you're looking for something that isn't in this world. His opinion is that truths are difficult to find and to figure out because they exist in another world. That other world he believes in. So let's clarify, what are these two worlds that Plato believes in? Well, the world that he lived in, the world that we now live in, is called the world of matter. Okay, so because we're material, right? And then the world, that other world, where the truths are found, is some other world called the world of ideas, so basically concepts and truths. And according to Plato, the truth is not here. It's there. If you want to know what good is, it's there. If you want to know what justice is, peace, equality, harmony, and all those things, all those ideas, the perfect truth about those things are found in that other world. However, things in this world, we think we know what good is. Sometimes we experience good things, right, and witness good acts, but they're only imperfect manifestations. All right, but let's talk about that later. First, I want to highlight that we have now discussed the first essential element of idealism. So today I'm going to make an argument that idealism has three essential components, and we have already talked about the first. The first is called dualism, or when you believe in the existence of two worlds. All right, you cannot be an idealist, or it would be very, very difficult for you to be an idealist and believe in only just one world. You have to have at least two. Okay, or at least that's what Plato was. So Plato believed in two worlds, making him a dualist. And those two worlds are the worlds of matter, the world of matter and the world of ideas. So um, there's this question: how do we know the truth when we're in this world, right? I mean, and what other things are in that other world? Well, Plato expands not just from concepts, no, but Plato said that even the true or absolute chair, absolute horse, absolute color blue is not found in this world of matter, but in that other world. And that's why we have so many different ideas and experiences. It's because our experiences of good, justice, love, or the color blue, or what a horse is, are different because each of these experiences are only copies, imperfect replicas. Okay, inferior copies, flawed replicas of those that are in the world of ideas. So the true concept of justice is there. The true concept of freedom, equality, love, good, what a chair really is, what color blue really is, what a horse really is, it's there. But all the chairs and blue and horses and truth and justice that we experience here are just incomplete replicas, okay? Images, extensions of that from the other world. Okay, now you might start feeling or thinking that this guy is unbelievable. And that's just weird. And you're right. They are unbelievable and weird. And that is usually the task of philosophers, especially from the ancient times. So anyway, let's try to understand the points that he's trying to make. Um, uh, we would like to go now to the second element of, or the second component of idealism, which is this, that Plato thinks that the things in this world are things that are illusions, illusory. They can mislead you to truth. Okay, he adopts this idea so much that in his formulation of an ideal society, or what we call a utopia, in his formulation of an ideal society, he wanted to censor severely, or maybe even rule out, or maybe deep inside he really felt he didn't welcome a particular group of people in his ideal society. What is this particular group of people that Plato does not want in his perfect society? The answer is artists. He does not want these painters. He does not want these sculptors in his perfect city. Now, why is that the case? He said that these painters and sculptors are twice removed from reality. How do we make sense of that as scholars studying Plato? Well, it's simple. Everyone is one time removed, or once removed from reality, because everything that's going on around us, according to the framework of dualism of Plato, is a copy. So whatever you see, feel, hear, or think is just a copy of whatever is in the perfect, in the world of ideas. Now that's one time that we're removed from the truth. The artists are twice or double as far as further from the truth, because their line of work makes them copy copies. They sculpt a naked figure. They paint fruits and vegetables or whatever. But these fruits are already copies of whatever is in the world of ideas. This naked figure, beautiful physique, is already a copy of whatever is in the world of ideas. So they're copying a copy, and that's why they're twice removed from the truth. And that's why Plato is not very welcoming of these type of professionals in his perfect society. So this leads us further to what is the second element of idealism. And my argument is that it is that one world is superior over the other. Okay, I repeat, the second element of idealism is that one world is held superior over the other. And of course, in this case of Platonic dualism, because there are other brands of dualism, in this case of Platonic dualism, the world of ideas is superior over the world of matter. Okay? Now, how does that affect us? How does that shape what education should be? All right, if the truth is out there, and before we answer those, maybe it's important to ask, how did you know in the first place what the truth is. You're right here, right? Plato, you're here. You're born like in that house, all right? In the world of matter. How do you make yourself credible? If the truth is in another world, how come you say that? How come you know? Or maybe even us, even normal people, how come sometimes we have this gut feeling that that's not true? Okay, when we say something is not true, that means we somehow know that well, what the truth is, okay, because we feel that something is untrue. So how do you know all these things, Plato, if you're always here in the world of matter? Now, Plato has an answer to that. He did not just split reality into two worlds, okay, the world of matter and the world of ideas. Plato also split humanity, okay, or you, okay, into two components, the body and the psyche. Okay, sir, what's psyche? Are we talking about psychology now? Not really. What do you mean psyche, sir? Is it the soul, the spirit, the will, the intent, the self? Actually, this happened. Though Plato existed in a very early time in our civilization, where those things are just one and the same, when we have not split the idea of soul, spirit, self into different concepts. So the term psyche actually refers to all of those. And later parts it's called intellect or agent intellect and so on and so forth. But to now it suffice that we understand that psyche refers to all those non-material components of the person. And he said that the truth is, we already know the truth, okay? Because we lived in the world of ideas as psyche. Our psyche came from that world. Our body came from this world of matter. Now, when they combined and they formed you, your psyche got corrupted somehow. It started forgetting things you already knew. And so when you learn something, when you educate yourself, you're not really acquiring knowledge. What you're doing is you're remembering forgotten knowledge. And this actually sounds too fancy, and of course, have zero scientific data to support this. But regardless, as far as the history of the education is concerned, this is one of the earliest uh, learning theories established, or at least proclaimed. Okay, and this is called the doctrine of reminiscence. Okay, basically, it's remembering. That learning is just a matter of remembering. Period. That's it. It's not acquisition of new knowledge. It's just regaining what you have lost. Because apparently your psyche, who knew everything, his memory was corrupted, and now you have to reacquire or remember these forgotten insights and knowledge. So that's how he answers that question. And going to the other question, how does this shape education, or at least in the mind of Plato, how does this shape education? It's quite clear on how it shaped Plato's idea of education. And by the way, it was Plato's idea, the whole institutionalized education. The public school system is Plato's idea. Okay, before they were mentoring and having tutors, and those kind of things. It was really more personal, but it was Plato who thought, you know what, why don't we make, the younger generation have this fixed schedule of meeting older generation to learn from the older generation. So if you like schooling, you should love and thank Plato. If you don't like it, then he's also the guy to blame for that. Anyway, Plato said that uh, he had a curriculum. He had 3 levels actually in his school, in the school that he wants to happen. Uh, but I will not go into the details of that. Instead, let me get to the highest level of curriculum. You may consider this the PhD or something. Actually, it's going to sound a lot like that. For him, the best students will reach the most difficult part of education. And it's going to be all about philosophy. Okay, because according to him, philosophy gives you training, gives you the capability to reach the truth, to understand the truth, to see through all these illusions of the physical, which the lesser people will not be able to understand. And sorry, did you say lesser people? That's kind of a discriminatory Yes, I said that, and yes, it is discriminatory because Plato was kind of an intellectual elitist. Okay, he did say that education should be for all. Okay, that even slaves and any person of color and any gender should be allowed to educate, and he sounds really inclusive. But in the end, he said that, you know what, there are three kinds of intellects or souls or psyche, and that is the bronze, silver, and gold. And some people are just born bronze, and they they're not the smartest. So what happened? What they become is they become the politicians of the Philippines. No, I'm kidding. The not smartest group of people, they become workers and all that. Yeah, it sounds discriminatory, but this is Plato. Okay, don't be angry at me. Anyway, then there's a silver soul where they get to become managers and even warriors, soldiers or generals. But the highest members of the state, the rulers of the state, are the gold-souled individuals, and they should be masters of philosophy. They should be philosophers. In fact, the leader of any state, according to Plato, should be what he calls a philosopher king. Okay? Only one who can philosophize well can rule well. And that's how much he values the intellect. So his metaphysics, or his idea of the two worlds, directly shaped how he designed in his mind the perfect system of education, which is which has qualifiers, which is separated into three distinct curriculums, and also sets or determines the kind of role you will have in the society for the rest of your life. His idea of education was not how we see education now, as a series of trainings. His idea of education was like the sorting hat of Harry Potter, right? That it tells you just where you belong: Slytherin, Gryffindor. That's how he saw education. It's a sorter. It's a way to classify which people are dumb, mediocre, or smart. And that's how he saw education. It's not that he never believed that through education, a person will become smarter. No, through education, you'll figure out how smart you are and what kind of roles in the society would best suit you. So that was one of the earliest, actually the earliest suggestion of the public school system is in a sorter type of educational perspective. All right, so I hope we're starting to build understanding on this second. That again, let's recount. The first is that the element or the component of dualism, and the second is that one world is superior over the other. In order to get to the third component, we would have to skip Plato and return to the ancient times after we talked about someone from the medieval era. And at this point, I'd like to talk about a medieval figure who we know for, I think, since the Philippines is a very Catholic country, we all know who this guy is. He was the former bishop of Tagaste, Africa. We call him Saint Augustine, okay, or Augustine of Hippo. So Saint Augustine was not a Christian until he converted. When he was already an adult, he was what we call what was called Manichaean. Okay, a Manichaean sounds complicated, but it's actually simply means followers of Mani. Okay, Mani. So you're a Manichaean if you follow Mani. So Mani is the thought that there are two forces eternally fighting, and that is the forces of light and the forces of darkness. And one of them is good, and one of them is bad. And the Manichaeans also have this amazing early explanation about the moon. Okay, according to the Manichaeans, the sun is the source of all goodness and all light. Goodness and light, they're the same thing. And the sun explodes and distributes goodness all over, existence, and several portions of the sun, bright lights or balls of light go to the earth. And now, because of darkness, the flesh, they tried to engulf these sparks of light. And so from the process of the dark flesh trying to engulf sparks of light, we have living things. We have animals and human beings who are made of flesh, but inside or somewhere inside our bodies are sparks of light. And when we die, the flesh, of course, rots away, but the sparks of light are collected to be returned to the sun. And what collects the sparks of light? The moon. So if we observe the moon, according to the Manichaeans, it slowly collects light. And then when it's full, it sends its light back to the sun until it is completely dark again. And then it collects light again. So that is a wonderful, albeit very false, explanation of how the moon works. But it used to work back during the Middle Ages before even the scissors were invented. So we understand it. That's fine. Still, one of the best thinkers of Catholicism came from this pagan society or belief, and that is Saint Augustine. Now, Augustine converted, of course, and became a Catholic, and he wrote letters to his son. Yes, he had a son, discussing Catholicism in a very philosophical manner. Saint Augustine thought that he could answer one important question, and that is the problem of evil. If God is good and everything came from God, where did evil come from? Why is it here? All right. How did that happen? If God created everything from himself, or from nothing, then why does evil exist? Did it come from God? That's going to be very problematic. So Augustine has an answer for this. And he said that, well, let's take a look at light. Okay? If I ask you to provide me light, you can give me light. You can strike a match. You can light a candle. You can turn on a flashlight or turn on the switch, and light will be produced. As you all know, light is a particle, right? And the wave, it has this complicated nature, being a duality. Anyway, it exists. It's there. You cannot deny that light exists, because I can give it to you. All right, I can bring you a fire or a flashlight or whatever, cell phone, right? And there you have light. However, if I tell you, okay, give me darkness. Now you might think that, okay, I can do that. I can turn off the lights, right? I can switch off the lights, blow the candle, right? Turn off my cell phone, blackouts. I've given you darkness. But here, Augustine will say, you know what, you're wrong. Okay, you did not give me darkness. You just deprived me of light. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that we think darkness exists, but only light exists. Darkness is simply the absence of light. Darkness is not something that's really there. Light, on the other hand, is something that's really there. But darkness isn't. It's just that the language that we use makes us think that darkness exists the same way that light does. But it doesn't. Okay? It's the same thing with silence and sound. All right? You can, if I ask you, hey, produce sound, you can shout at me, sing or something. But if I say, okay, I want silence, give me silence. You cannot give silence. What are you going to do if you're going to give silence? You will deprive someone of sound. So sound exists. Silence does not. Silence is simply a status. What we call a deprivation of sound, that is silence. And again, language fools us into thinking that it's the same thing. It exists the same way as sound, but it doesn't. Language is very problematic, right? It's like saying, for example, have you thought of this? Have you noticed this? If you know someone who had an accident, a brutal accident, losing a limb or maybe an arm or a hand, you would say, alam mo, kawawa naman si Jonathan. Bakit? Na-aksidente siya. Ano nangyari? Ngayon, meron na siyang putol na kamay. Dahil sa aksidente, nagkaroon siya ng putol na kamay. Now, wait a minute. Whose hand is that? That he now has, right? Because when we say meron siyang putol na kamay, it's like, when you think about it, it's like he's holding a hand that's severed, right? Meron na kasi siyang, well, that's disgusting. He should return that, all right? But what we actually mean, and we say it the same way, is that he lost his hand. And that's a very accurate way of saying he lost his hand. But sometimes we say, yeah, meron na siyang putol na kamay. Like it's something that exists, okay? And that's how language confuses us. And Augustine here, very brilliantly in his argument, pointed out that that's the same way we confuse evil. Evil is simply the deprivation of good. When good is insufficient, that is called evil, you know? And it doesn't really exist. It's not there. Only goodness exists because everything came from God. But if that is deprived, if that is lessened, then that particular scene or status is maybe what we will consider bad or evil. And that's only an illusion. Of course, it's a problem in language or perception, but it's not really there. Only good exists. And that's how he tried to solve that question. And this is called this response, this strategy is called the theory of divine illumination, that God is some sort of light, okay, that spreads out, and any part that is not reached by that light is called darkness, but it doesn't really exist. It's just the privation of light. So now you can see that's a really good argument, you know, considering that it was the Middle Ages, from Saint Augustine. That may work on on many Catholics and even other religious people up to this day. And if you do believe in that, please remember that that came from a pagan religion called Manichaeans. All right. So let's talk about, now that we know a little bit about the background of St. Augustine, let's talk about his idealist assumptions. So St. Augustine proclaimed the line, or this line is heavily attributed to him. He said, you must first believe in order to understand. According to him, it's useless, you know, to try and prove the existence of God if you don't believe him anyway. Why? Well, we'll try to answer that. Okay. First, let's talk about his book. He has this very popular book called The Two Cities. He wrote about two cities where one city is superior and will flourish forever, and the other city is inferior and will perish. Okay? Now that sounds very familiar already with one element or component we've already talked about. Okay? So two cities also directly brings us back to the first component we talked about, or dualism. So these are the two cities of St. Augustine. Is the city of God, which is perfect, and the city of man, which is sinful and flawed and is doomed to perish. Okay? Such that if you are a person following your own will and rejects the plan of God, then you are a citizen of the city of man, and thereafter you shall suffer. On the other hand, if you are a citizen that follows the will of God and is voluntarily, out of your complete free will, become an instrument of his will, then you are a citizen of the city of God and you shall live forever. Okay? So it's obvious already how his narrative follows the two components. Now, the third component is something we will get from him. Okay? How many of you are bad at mathematics? How many of you suck at mathematics? Right? Think about it. No one's watching, you know, be honest. All right? No one's watching. Sorry. There's always someone watching, right? Remember, there's always someone watching. Who is that? China. No, I'm kidding. It's gone. No, so think, am I good at math? Am I bad at math? You can be honest. Okay, so for those of you who are bad at math, would you like to know St. Augustine's explanation? Very simple explanation. Why you suck at mathematics. All right, you ready? Okay, here is how St. Augustine justifies and explains why you are bad at mathematics. It is because you are a sinner. Period. That's it. Okay? Makasalanan ka kasi. Yan tuloy. Bulok mo sa mathematics. No? Makasalanan ka kasi. Wait, sir, that's a bit of a problem there. I think some of you not very happy with that response. Is that really what St. Augustine would say? I think so. Yeah, let me explain why. Because he thinks that God is good, of course, and that being good at mathematics is a blessing, right? It's a blessing, it's a gift from God. That is talent, that is intelligence, and that's a gift that God can give. And God loves you. So he's trying to give you that gift, yeah? But somehow he can't give it to you, or you were unable to receive it. Why? There's only one thing that can sever God's grace. There's only one thing that can stop God from sending you his blessing, his gift, his guidance. And what is that one thing that can cut your relationship from God? I feel like a preacher now. Yeah, maybe I should start a church. Just demand 5% of your salary, but you'll be saved anyway. That's you have a 5% discount now. If you join me now, I'll give you 4% of your salary, and you'll still be saved. Kidding. Let's get back to the question. Uh, 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 what's the question? I'm sorry. No, go ahead and reflect on that. How are you not offended by that? Maybe you are, okay, because that's personal. You're just saying you're bad at mathematics, and now Saint Augustine is accusing you of being a bad person, of a sinner. Well, because sin is the only thing that can cut you from grace, right? That's a classic Catholic teaching. And that is what you did. And that's why now God cannot give you the talent of, being a math genius, because you're a sinner. I don't know what you did, but you stopped the intelligence for mathematics, okay? And that's how Augustine sees intelligence, that it's a gift from God. And most of you would probably say that's not how you were trained. In your 4 years of education, in I don't know if you're PNU or in whatever college you graduated from, it doesn't make sense. You have so many psychological theories on learning. It's you don't believe this, right? I don't think you believe that that's why, these two things, intellectual capability and spirituality, are two separate things, right? How many of you would say, oh no, I don't think so, right? You would say, I don't really feel like agreeing to St. Augustine. But see, here's what's so, let's say, amazing in a way about idealism, is that this is from so many centuries ago, but many of us still subscribe to this, maybe unknowingly. All right, let me ask you this question. You think that intellectual capacity and faith, they don't mix, right? Right? Do you grade students by their faith? Like, listen, I'm gonna compute your science grade. Okay, first, can you recite the Apostles' Creed, please? We don't do that anymore. We used to, but we don't do that anymore, right? That's gonna be a bad practice, and you don't believe that. But are you sure you don't believe that faith and intellectual capability are, related? Are you sure? Because let me ask you this question. When you took the let, right? When you took the let, did you pray? You did pray, right? Most likely you prayed before, during, or after. But what is let? Is let a test of faith, right? You'd understand if you pray, if you're in a moral dilemma, right? You would pray. I would understand that. There's nothing off with that. But let is an intellectual test, right? It's a test of mastery. It's a test of knowledge. But why did you pray? Because, and you don't want to admit this, because you have a degree, you have a diploma, all these learning theories and all that, but you cannot admit out loud. But somehow something inside you tells you that you will do better if you pray. You will do better in the exam, which you have been taught. It's completely unrelated to faith, but you will do better if you pray. And that's why you prayed. And that's why you were lying to me earlier, and maybe to yourself, when you were thinking that St. Augustine doesn't make sense. I don't like that. I'm modern. I'm a contemporary scholar. I'm trying to earn a graduate degree. I cannot agree to St. Augustine. But really, if you prayed during Let, you agree with him, even if you don't want to. And this is how we see the strength of these so-called old philosophies, and we want to condemn them and say, oh, those are the old stuff. We don't We don't really practice them anymore. Really? I think I just showed you you do. Okay? This idealist concept, and this is the third element. The third element is that intelligence, morality, and even beauty are considered the same when it comes to idealism. They're a package deal. And I call this the unity of virtue. Okay? There's another saying, the true is also the good and is also the beautiful. All right? Loosely translated into Tagalog, that is, ang matalino ay siya ring mabuti at siya ring maganda o kaaya-aya. Right? That's the translation. But again, if I repeat it, you'll feel yourselves antagonizing, refusing that. Right? Tama ba yun? Ang matalino ay siya ring mabait at siya ring maganda. Parang, sir, parang mali naman yata. May kilala ako eh. Maganda pero ano eh, di ba? Or something like that, right? And you say you don't believe that. Of course, I don't believe that. That's false. I would never adopt that kind of mentality. But again, let me put that into question since it's kind of what I do. Are you sure? Are you sure you don't believe that? Right? Imagine yourself, or maybe this happened to you already. Imagine inviting some scholar, maybe from abroad or, who has 2 PhDs and multiple master's degrees and publications and all that. And then imagine this scholar disrespected you, treated you badly, immorally. What would you say? You'd probably complain, saying, ba't ganun ang ugali nun? Ang taas ng pinag-aralan mo. Right? That's a reflex. Maybe you won't even notice yourself thinking that way, but you do. And that is idealist. That is an idealist philosophical assumption, that the smart people are also the good people. And that's what you were trying to object and deny earlier. But if put in that position, you will immediately go into that mode. You will say, why is this guy with 2 PhDs so disrespectful? I thought he was a smart and learned intellectual. But again, that's an idealist assumption, which out loud you may disagree with, like Augustine earlier, but if you reflect on your actual responses and the way you think, if you put yourself in this scenario, you will have to be honest and say, yeah, you know what? I think I have some idealism still in me because of that. Here's a better example. Imagine meeting a really beautiful person, a really beautiful person, sobrang ganda, pare, or sobrang guapo, or whatever your type is, or both, it doesn't matter. Okay, but super attractive person you met. And then suddenly, the same person disrespects you, disregards you, and does immoral things. Right? What anong chika mo sa tropa mo? Diba? What will you say? Sa mga kumari mo, you say, tingnan mo yun, ang ganda-ganda pero ang sama ng ugali. Right? We say that. Like, wait, is that supposed to be related? Right? But we do say that. A lot of us would say that. Even PhD holders would say that. Na bakit ang ganda-ganda nun tapos ang sama ng ugali. Right? Pero imagine kung pangit yun. Kung pangit yun na masama ugali, magre-reklamo ka ba? Hindi, no? Panatag ang loob mo. Tanggap mo no? Pag pangit yan, tapos masama ugali, wala naman nagreklamo na bakit ang pangit-pangit nun tapos sasama na ugali, di ba? Hindi yan sinasabi nating mga Pilipino or any culture. We don't say that because we feel like it fits, right? We feel like, yeah, she's ugly, therefore she's probably an immoral human being. So this is, of course, objectable. I'm not saying it's true, but what I'm saying is most of us actually think this way. If we put ourselves or find ourselves in that position, which brings me to the point that idealism stayed after centuries. Okay, and even you guys may have only met this term, today or during the orientation, but you cannot deny in yourself now, after our conversation, and what if, that it is traceable to your mindset. That idealism is a centuries-old philosophy, but endures the test of time and is actually quite active. And we may not admit it, but it's still around us. You're an idealist, I'm an idealist, or maybe most of our friends are idealists. We just don't understand. We're not conscious, but we are. And this is how prevalent this idealism, this enduring philosophy of education is. Now, from the time of Socrates, from the time of Plato, it endured, and still we operate on these assumptions. So now I think we're ready to answer the question, kailangan bang mag-lipstick sa classroom? All right? Now, most female students of mine who complain about yung principal ko nga po, pinapakailaman pati yung lipstick ko. Minsan, tinapik ako sa balikat, minonstrahan pa ako. Oo, daw, it's so disrespecting. You know? So a student complained that, like it's so awkward too, right? Because it's a comment on your face, right? I mean, you would accept principals commenting on like your content or syllabus, but if the principal says like, hey, consider wearing makeup in class, that's like, oh, okay. All right, that's so personal. But today, all right, we find a philosophy of education that can actually defend that kind of practice. Because for idealists, if you are to be appreciated as a teacher, then you must be smart, you must be a good model, or meaning you have a good moral character. And because of those two, from the idealist perspective, then you should also be attractive. You should be presentable. Okay, so you cannot be, you know, all roughed up and that, and then appear in front of everyone, because people would think, oh, this guy's no good, right? And we do think this, and you know, Filipinos, we pretend we have high moral grounds just because we're a religious country. We don't. If you remember, there's a PUP professor who's a physicist who the famous news was that he was pushed, you know, evicted from a jeepney because he was shabby looking. He had you know, facial hair and long hair, and some of them are gray or white, and he was just wearing jeans that are not really presentable. But this is some highly respected professor of PUP, but people thought this guy is probably a thief, a robber, you know, someone you can't trust, someone with low educational attainment. So we say idealism was from centuries ago, but once you're a conscious educator and you're familiar with this philosophy of education, it's so easy to just look around and see it from your peers, from your learning environment, from your principals, and maybe, if you're honest enough, inside yourself. And with that, I'd like to conclude our first lecture. Thank you very much for listening, and see you on the next one. Bye.